sake that I didn't do too much damage with this thing because I do not want to relive this surgery nightmare for a second,
No, I wouldn't
especially
either.
considering that now I have to have crutches, knee scooters, and everything else, and I'm living in the garage. I'm living out here in the garage. But
We're live, guys.
oh
I
yeah,
know.
I know. Well, this is how we usually do things.
Oh, that's me.
We start talking a little bit.
Sorry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us back here at the Weekly Roundtable. I am one of your hosts, Frank Johnson, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation and host of The Range Report, as found on YouTube, Rumble, Patreon. Check us out, like, hit subscribe, and roll all the rest of that stuff. To my side right here is Michael Marshall. That would be this way. Co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation, a historian and constitutional specialist. And right there, not to be underrated, is Michael Vasquez, the dragon of the Southern Tier, New York's only independent journalist. A man who lives by the title and is feared by politicians and lobbyists. The coast, the man, the machine, Michael Vasquez.
Yeah. I have too many friends out there. They all love me.
Yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an interesting week, to say the least, as far as the world of politics and news goes. A lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of something for everybody to get a little bit of a taste of. And I haven't followed any of it. I'm shooting from the hip here, folks. I'm looking at one screen trying to catch up with the news briefs from the week, as I have been motivated to do anything but turn on the television because I don't have a TV out here in the garage. And I'm not going to live stream out here. And since I'm no longer watching any of the network news channels, I have to gather my information from on-the-ground sources. And most of them don't want nothing to do with me this week because I'm aggravated and irritated and in a lot of pain. So there's that. So I'm going to leave it up to these two guys here, this one and this one, to and then I will opine as only I can in a loud and boisterous manner.
Well, you missed quite a week. I mean, a lot of stupid in this week.
Yeah.
But probably one of the biggest things that everyone's talking about right now, and I think for the wrong reasons, is what happened in New York City. That a homeless man who has many issues, mental issues. He's been arrested 40 some odd times, several times for violent crime, attacking people. Was on the subway in New York City, got choked, died, apparently unintentionally. There's video of that, which has been chopped up by the various news media to push their agenda, their message on what happened. And now we have the left looking to have riots in New York City and put out another autonomous zone, create more insurrection in New York City, because it has to be a black on white thing. Even though in the video, in every single video that exists, there is a black man and a white man holding down the homeless man, who happens to be black, holding him down. So, but they're only focused on the one guy who happens to be a Marine, and he happens to be white. And so they're after him to make it racial, ignoring the existence of a black man who is on the scene holding down the very same homeless man, and ignoring all of the news of, well, yeah, he's been arrested 40 some odd times. He's been arrested for violent assault against people. Yeah, they're ignoring all of that. This is just an innocent guy who said, I want to have, I'm hungry. He said more than I'm hungry. He said, I don't care if I go to jail. I'm ready. I don't care if I go to jail. I'm willing to go to prison for life. I'm willing to die. Which, when he says that and then throws his jacket onto the subway floor, and this is a man who's been seen at that same subway stop, that same subway train, assaulting people in the past. Yeah, that's a threat. And it seems that the Marine went up to him, and tried to subdue him, got help from other passengers to subdue him. They had to wait over 15 minutes for the police to show up. And in the process, while he was being held in the chokehold, while he's being held down, he died. No one knew that at the time, but they quickly found out he died. Police checked it out, looked at the video, listened to the witnesses, sent the man home, did not charge him. It is a homicide, but they didn't charge him with a crime. And now we have the left saying, well, this was obviously racial. This was a black lynching. We have AOC coming out and saying that he's a murderer. We have Al Sharpton saying he's a murderer. But the major news media doesn't want to talk about any other factors, anything else going on, any of the other people involved. And I think most people have missed the fact that the root problem here, the thing that caused this to happen, isn't the fact that he was homeless, which has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with him being black. It has nothing to do with his mental issues. It's the progressive policies that bail reform, the policies of social justice that allowed him to not be in jail, to not be getting the proper treatment that he should have been receiving, that allowed him to be released time and time and time again so that he could be a threat to the public. And the fact they didn't want to charge him because he's black and therefore he's somehow, by the tan of his skin, absolved of the crimes that he committed. And the fact that they were defunding the police, which means there's less police officers, why it took them over 15 minutes to get to that subway car to deal with this, which is what everyone was waiting for them to do. This was a problem of progressive policies that created this problem, and that's why a man is dead. But, the news media doesn't talk about it that way.
Oh, no, of course not. I mean, what's the good in that? Okay, I mean, you can't sow any division if you point out the real cause of everything.
Yeah, it's because he's a Marine, and I even had a live stream, and a guy from Ohio was talking with me about it, and a lot of people get very passionate about this. When they're talking, they're so passionate, but he's black, which has nothing to do with anything. And the guy was white, which had nothing to do with it. And by the way, there were black and white and Hispanic people all surrounding it and involved in the entire process. So don't tell me about various races. There was a race of everybody in the event. So that's useless. Throw that out. Homeless. Well, he's homeless, so he's mentally issued. One doesn't equal the other. Throw that out. That you're making shit up.
Well, there's a video that I did see from last year sometime where the same person, this guy who got choked out, was going wild on one of the platforms that train that he was on today, happens to stop by. And he pushed a woman face first into the side of a railroad car.
Yeah. See,
now the woman who got pushed is a light-haired white woman. Where were the cries of, that was racism at the time? The seconds leading up to that push, where he violently assaulted that woman, he was fighting with two other people, of various races. This guy was an equal opportunity lunatic that had issues, and didn't matter who he attacked or anything. But every time that he attacked somebody, nobody cried about the racial disparity in who he was attacking.
Because it wasn't advantageous. There's no advantage.
It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the mold. So we're not going to talk about it. It was just another one of the videos that surfaces on Twitter exposing the intense crime rate that runs rampant through New York City. Now, as somebody who used to patrol in the subways in New York City years ago, I could tell you this little tidbit of information. Every so often you'll hear, now Mike, you lived in the Bronx, so you'll probably remember this. Every now and then, you would have a report come out in the news about how somebody was pushed onto a railroad track.
Yeah.
They were killed. And you would see that report once every 5-6 months that some deranged individual assaulted
once a year or so. Yeah.
If you had any idea the frequency that actually happens, in the New York City subway system. If people had any clue as to how often that actually takes place, how often murders, rapes, violent assaults, robberies, or the whole laundry list of crimes that take place on the New York subway systems. If the people in New York City had any clue at all as to how bad the subways actually are, they wouldn't ride the trains at all.
Well,
So the
no,
people
I
in
think most people kind of know. It's like one of those things you know in the back of your head, but you
when
don't
you
deal with.
when you find out that there are an average 4 to 6 people a month thrown onto the railroad tracks in front of a moving train.
That's more than I thought.
That's a hell of a lot more than you thought. The reason you don't hear a lot about it is because they're nameless, faceless individuals who happen to live down in the subway system
Mm.
because they're homeless due to the policies in New York City. They're homeless and not getting the mental help they need because of the policies of New York City. So New York City creates policies that creates people that wind up in extremely horrific situations that then become victims to other people that New York City sets free to basically prey on everybody else. And you don't hear about it because if you did, you would never ride the subway. Period. You would never get on a train if you knew how bad it actually was. Now, they have to tell you every so often that it happens, especially now, especially in a world where everybody's running around with a phone in their pocket, and they're live streaming their day-to-day lives. You're going to hear more and more about it. So now what do they have to do? They have to put more cops on patrol down there. They have to take from resources somewhere else and put them down there. There was a point where NYPD and transit, even though both under the umbrella of police departments, were separate entities. You had the NYPD, transit, NYFD, EMS, were all separate. Now everybody's kind of under one big umbrella down there. They share a lot of their resources, courtesy of the Patriot Act and such like that. But if people knew how bad things were, they wouldn't go. So the media doesn't report it because the city doesn't want it to report it. And if people knew what it was really like, the idea of the 15-minute city would be nightmare of the 15-minute city, because this kind of thing that happened today would only become so much more common and more people would fall victim. And it wouldn't be the downtrodden that fall victim to it. It's going to be your middle class, upper crust, the people who work on the, up on the East Village, who work down by, by the Central Park or whatever, the Friends people, when they start
Upper
being,
West Side.
yeah, when they start being the victims of it, then you're going to start seeing a lot more of this happen where people will be outraged. But for now, you're not going to know about it. And the fact that this kid had 40 some odd arrests, and the only clip of him that the media portrays of him is him doing the Michael Jackson impersonation.
There's other videos of him. They just won't show the public.
That's the only one that they show, is him doing his little song and dance act down in the street. It's like the same thing with the Trayvon Martin situation.
Yeah, picture of him being way younger than he actually was.
When he was 12 years old and in church duds going to church with his parents. The media will distort anything, and then the facts of the matter will only get printed on the last page. And this whole situation is going to be used for one purpose and one purpose only: to burn New York City to the ground.
Yeah,
that's going to be what the motivation is going to be. And then guarantee you, it's Donald Trump's fault.
Well, they haven't gone there yet, but they're definitely going. The BLM is already out saying social justice, no justice, no peace.
Well, I could tell you how they're going to link it. I'll tell you exactly how they're going to link it, because this is how predictable they are. This kid who restrained this guy. He's a Marine, right?
Yeah.
The media right now is pouring over his Marine Corps record. His Marine Corps record. When did he enlist? When was his commitment finished?
How did he get discharged? What did he do?
Right.
Yeah.
If he was a Marine for 12 hours, 12 seconds under the administration of Donald Trump, then he's going to be a product of the toxic masculinity that was
Yeah.
Injected into our military under the Trump administration that he was acting basically as one of Trump's minions.
Well,
Because Trump's a racist, so this guy's a racist, and
you know,
because he's
only idiots who have never served in the military could dare say something like that. Not to say there isn't racism in the military like there is in the world. It exists. Anywhere we have a large group of people, you're going to have some people who have ideas that are objectionable to at least someone. That's true. But the reality is, in the military, I know personally, I'll speak directly for the Marine Corps, and I can say this for people I know in the Army who've served in Iraq and over in Afghanistan. I can say this about people from Vietnam. I can say this about Korea. I can say this about people in the Army and the Marines that I know personally, besides my experience. The racism ends really quick because everyone knows when you go out and you are in a live fire, war zone, conflict zone, the guy standing next to you is going to keep you alive. You got no time to waste to worry about, is he black, is he white, is he Asian, whatever. You don't care. You care about, is he good enough to protect me? And am I good enough to protect him? And the two of you, the four of you, the fire team, the squad are going to keep you all alive. Because whatever issues you have, you will deal with it back home quietly. And it's no more than, worst case, you're in a bar and you're having a bar fight and you get over it. Because this is the person that will keep you alive. So you don't really care. I've met more than a few racists, actually just a handful, in the Marine Corps. Literally less than a handful, as I remember. And I remember, how did we resolve it? There was a fist fight. We had a bunch of words. We got into a little fist fight off of base. And you know what? That man was one of my best defenders for the rest of the time I spent in the Corps that we were together. Why? Because we got it out of our system. We dealt with it. We had issues. We didn't agree with things. Fantastic. He came from a place where he had a very different view when he grew up than me in upstate New York City. He was more upset the fact that I was a New York City boy than anything else. Once it really came down to it, it was just the easy thing to pick on is the color. That was easy. But you know what? We worked through it. We had our little fight. We had our argument, and we got through it. And that Marine was standing by me every other moment of the time that we were in service. Why? Because our color, our skin tones didn't matter. It was what Marine was going to protect me, what Marine's going to back me up. And that's the only thing that mattered. Right, Mike?
We're all the same color. We're all green.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we're all green.
Yeah, the BDUs are only one color. So
that's it. You got Marines. We're all green. You know, we're fighting the same bad guy. We're all getting screwed by the same government. It always happens. And so we all deal with it. And for them to try and make this about white and black, and again, we have the video, and they are so colorblind. So the BLM, the far left, they are so racist because they're looking at a video with a black guy and a white guy that are in this video holding down the homeless guy that is being recorded by a Hispanic guy who has said that this guy was giving everyone the impression he was intimidating people. People thought that they were going to be endangered. You have people of every color and every type saying that this was a problem and they were just trying to resolve the problem, that no one thought that this guy was going to die because no one had the intent to kill him. And yet they look at that and go, here's a blinder. We can't see the black guys on the screen, can't see him. Somehow they just can't see his body right there in the middle of the screen. No, they can only see the white guy and the black homeless guy, who is the aggressor and caused the problem. And they want to eliminate, the cause of this is because of CRT. It's because white people are inherently evil and black people are inherently victims. And they don't actually want to look at, well, it's actually the progressive policies that caused all this. They don't want to touch that.
Have we even had a preliminary report come back from the coroner's office?
We did one. We know that the coroner ruled it it was a homicide. by compression. The guy suffocated. But they didn't determine the toxicology. So we don't, toxicology was a factor. The compression, he was in a chokehold, an improvised chokehold, basically for about 15 minutes. Well, we don't even know. People are saying it was 15 minutes all the way through, except all we know is that he was being subdued for 15 minutes while they were waiting for the police. We have video of the last 3.5 minutes. We don't know what happened in the 12 minutes before that. We don't know how they got into the situation as the video starts. We don't know how they got there. So there's a lot of conjecture that's being spun on how this took place, that the Marine just attacked him. That's not what we're hearing from the witnesses. That doesn't seem to be correct from what we can determine at this moment. So people are just spinning things because they're emotionally, they're being manipulated emotionally. And they're just
and
grasping.
That's the whole thing. And that's the whole purpose for a lot of this stuff. Okay, whether it's CRT, whether it's the LGBTQ stuff that's going on, the drag queen story hour. This isn't about pushing a rights thing. It's not about any of that type of stuff. It's not about equal rights. It's not about getting people on a more even playing field. It is about causing division. It is about putting one side to the other side and dividing us basically along political lines, along color lines, along race lines, along sexuality lines, you name it. It's nothing more than division.
Yeah, for political gain. Because now we have...
Okay. Well, it is political gain, but it's more than that. Okay? It is literally to steal away the power from the people. The more we are divided, the less power we have.
Well, yes.
Okay.
That too, yeah.
And I mean, literally back when they're working on the Constitution and working on uniting the states, okay, that was the whole premise, was we are stronger together. Divided we will fall.
True.
The same is happening right here today. Okay, this is all about trying to maintain power. It's nothing more than that.
Well, that's the sad part about it. It's blatant. I mean, once you take away the emotion, it is blatantly obvious that this is about politics, political gain, a political agenda. Once you take away the emotion of it and just look at it and then look at the response, then you're seeing exactly what it is. And, I want to see AOC and Al Sharpton are playing into this massively. They're the ones who are screaming about, well, it's murder. This is a black lynching. You're escalating. That's nothing but escalation of the emotions to cloud people's actual clear thinking about this, to think through what happened, what's the result of what happened. They're trying to make people so angry that they will lash out and they will just react. It's kind of like Maxine Waters going over to Minneapolis and saying, when it's about Derek Chauvin, and saying that he has to be convicted of charges he didn't even get charged with. And if he doesn't get convicted of charges that he never got charged with, well, then the people should rise up because there is no justice and to have riots. And that resulted in, within 45 minutes, there was a drive-by shooting it was literally 2 blocks away from where she had been speaking. And there were riots in that city, again, in that same autonomous zone that they had been maintaining. So this is what they're doing. They're just driving people. It's like whipping cattle into a stampede. Don't let them think. Don't let anyone breathe or consider anything. Just keep them
Well,
moving.
I honestly believe that they are trying to push us into a civil war.
It feels like it.
Okay. I mean, the United States has been the most powerful nation in the world for a good many years. Okay.
Many.
One of the biggest reasons why we were so powerful is because whenever something happened to the United States, we rose up and we united.
Yes.
And it didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter on any of it because we came together. Okay. This is purposely setting the stage to divide us to the point where we have another civil war, and that another civil war will be so detrimental to this country that it will destroy us as a nation.
But
It will literally eliminate our power on the world stage.
But that's what the Democratic Socialists of America, the BLM, the Antifa, that's what they want. That's what they have told us. BLM was created to introduce blacks and Latinos to communism. Democratic Socialists of America are promoting socialism and want to rewrite the Constitution. Antifa is about anarchy and just destroying the system. They have told us explicitly that they want to break. And that's why they have been creating autonomous zones that exist at this moment across America, which, if we want to talk about insurrection, which is some of the other news out this week, is they are insurrectionists. They violate every local, state, and federal law. Look at what the Defenders of the Atlanta Forest sounds like a nice name. What did they do? They attacked the city of Atlanta. They attacked the fire department and the police station and the emergency medical services for the city of Atlanta. They're hurting the very people who are trying to help the people of Atlanta. And they're saying, well, they're the good guys and they're righteous for destroying public property and taking away these services from the people because they have an autonomous zone, because they are violating every law at every level of this government. And they're recruiting people from outside the United States. They recruited people from Canada and from France and from Germany to come to America to be part of that riot in Atlanta. And we're supposed to say that those are the good guys? Come on. This is the problem. They are using this, and I guarantee you what they're looking to do right now is go throughout New York City and to create riots in New York City and hope that those riots will spread in sympathy to Boston, to LA, to Portland, to Seattle, to Austin, to Boulder. They want it to be around the country so that people will be terrified. And people like AOC will say, see, this is why we need a law. Because if we stop those angry white men, then everything will be fine. It's kind of like what they say about guns. Well, if we just get rid of the guns, everyone will be fine. And this is a stupid lie. It is not realistic, and it's not the source of the problem. The problem wasn't the Marine. The problem was that this guy who needed a home, who needed mental help, the guy who needed to be in jail, none of those things happened to him, and that's why this happened. Because if any of those things, if he got a house, if he got the mental help, if he was in prison, he would never have died. No one would have been threatened. This situation would not exist. But it's their policies, their push for division. They want these kind of things to happen so that they can turn around in the news and blame it on someone and say, I have the answer. I will do something. Keywords, do something. We're going to do something about this. And the next thing you see is they don't do anything to resolve it. They do something to take advantage of it. And that's the insulting part. And that's what divides us, I think.
True. You started talking about the Constitution, okay, and how they're wanting to basically get rid of it. Actually, I want to show you something. Have you ever heard of Irwin Chemerinsky.
Not that I recall. Frank?
Okay, Erwin Chemerinsky was a dean at Berkeley. He's also, University of California, Berkeley dean and respected, quote unquote, legal scholar, Erwin Chemerinsky, wrote a book called We the People, a progressive reading of the Constitution for the 21st century. Okay. I'm actually getting ready to put it up here. If my computer cooperates.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, we'll wait for that. Vess, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You had a cast in your leg for a year.
Yeah.
How did you deal with the itching? I have an itch on my ankle that I can't get to.
There's not much you can do. You just get used to it.
You know, the number one reason other than my intellect, health, and fear of heights that I didn't become an astronaut was because I couldn't imagine wearing that stupid bubble on the head and not being able to do this. If I couldn't scratch my face or rub my eyes, I would drive myself nuts. So that's why. And I have an itch on my ankle for the last week.
No, there's nothing. I've had a cast going from my hip all the way down my entire leg, enclose the whole thing. And from time to time, you just get an itch. It's like wiggle inside the cast. And other than that, just try and focus on anything else but. Because I know everyone says, well, get a bent middle hanger, except that cuts your skin and you may get infection. And
well, I got to be careful because where the incisions are. So I can't stick nothing down there. So I'm like trying to manipulate the muscles in my leg so that I can like self-scratch. And they gave me this medication that I don't know the name of it that's supposed to help reduce the sensitivity. So,
try Benadryl. Benadryl is an antihistamine which helps with itching.
Or I drink beer. I drink a bunch of beer.
Well, I have an extremely high tolerance for medication, so most of the stuff that they give me doesn't work anyway. So I don't take the painkillers. I don't take this. I don't take that. The only medication that works better than prescribed is Benadryl, but only to put me unconscious. Any of the other side effects that I'm suffering from are still there. It'll just help me fall asleep.
Yeah, Benadryl is good is an antihistamine. It's supposed to help relieve itching.
Yeah,
but anyway, I want to get back to this book. My computer's not going to cooperate tonight. Thankfully, Frank is sending me a new one, and it should be getting here soon. And we'll resolve a lot of these issues, I do hope. But anyway,
we're trying again.
The University of California, Berkeley dean, respected legal scholar Erwin Chemerinsky expertly exposes how conservatives are using the Constitution to advance their own agenda that favors business over consumers and employees, the government power over individual rights, But exposure is not enough. Progressives have spent too much of the last 45 years trying to preserve the legacy of the one court's most important rulings and reacting to Republicans-dominated Supreme Courts by criticizing their erosion of rights, but have not yet developed a progressive vision for the Constitution itself. Yet if we look to the promise of the preamble, liberty and justice for all, and take seriously its vision, a progressive reading of the Constitution can lead us forward as we continue our fight ensuring democratic rule, effective government, justice, liberty, and equality.
Okay. Equality, equally miserable.
I can't stand it when they say equality, because people really, when we hear the left talk about equality, they truly mean equity, which are not the same thing, as we've covered here before. And it's always, whenever you hear them talk about equality, they always back it up with priority. which means they're not talking about equality. They're
No.
talking about equity. They're talking about putting one group over another group, and that's putting advantage to one versus another. That's a bias. That is a prejudice, a preference. It is anything but equality. And so whenever the left says that, they just like this because it's a buzzword. And they think, go ahead.
Well, plus their version of equality is that everything that they figure on being equality has to be done by taking from one group and giving to another.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They have to hurt one to help someone else, as opposed to just helping someone because it's a good thing to do, or having a policy that enables people to help themselves to reach a certain height.
No, but you're not capable of doing it
under the progressive vision. Okay, and this really isn't even a progressive vision. It's actually a socialist vision of the Constitution. There is no property rights.
Well, there's no rights of most things. They like to say, most people have never read the old Constitution of the Soviet Union under the USSR. Most people don't know they had a constitution. And if you read the Constitution that they had written down, it was beautiful. It is one of the best written legal documents that have ever been written. It sounds so free. Then you look at how they actually put it into place. What did they actually do? Because that was the sales pitch. And that's the thing people have to take understanding. You hear these things and they word it in a way so the sales pitch sounds really great, but they don't want you to think about, okay, and this is what they're actually doing. Look at the examples in their own actions and around the world, and what do you actually get? Because what you actually get isn't what they're selling. They tell you that they're going to be very peaceful, yet they have autonomous zones, and in each and every autonomous zone that has ever existed, we see violence surrounding it. There are always riots, there are always arsons, very often there are murders that are always attached to every single autonomous zone that has been in the United States over the last 4 years, if not more, every single time. So we have a pattern here. It's been well established that they're going to say, well, we need to resist and we need to fight. And we have this autonomous zone to highlight all of the wrongs. And then they do more wrongs in those autonomous zones. And they devolve into little warlords with their little fiefdoms, trying to make it more like an African nation, more like Mogadishu than it is about being in Minneapolis.
Gesundheit.
You're fine. But that's the accurate comparison. That's what they're actually. Look at what they did in Seattle and Portland. Look at what they did in Minneapolis, in Austin, in Boulder, in Brooklyn, and in Atlanta. Every single one of these autonomous zones, look at what they have done. They have killed little children as young as 8 years old. They have killed teenagers. They have had women that have been sexually assaulted. They have burned down buildings. They have assaulted what is no less than their prisoners, the other Americans who are in this zone that has been captured by them against their will, and they can't speak up because they have roving gangs of enforcers beating up people who dare to speak against what they have done. And this is in every single autonomous zone that has ever existed since, at least realistically, since about 2017 when we started seeing them appear, but most importantly, since 2020. And anyone who doubts me, look at the data, look at the news reports coming from the left, and they will tell you all the same thing. So, the socialists love to say, and the progressives love to say, well, we have only your best interest in heart. And yet, when we see what they do, that's their promise. And then what do? They take things away from people. They take away rights. They take away property. They punish people who dare to speak up. Anyone who has any question about what they're doing, they punish people for daring to not blindly obey. That's what they do. What they promise is, well, it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. Everyone's got candy. And what they do is the same thing as what we have seen in some of the worst dictators around the world. And they don't get called out for it. Instead, we have the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world saying, these guys are fantastic. We get AOC and Cori Bush and Maxine Waters saying, these people are heroes. They're not doing anything heroic.
Eventually, they do get called out for it. And then then they excuse it and they go, well, that's not real socialism.
Oh, in the few times that we've seen,
every single time that you have an exemplar and it fails catastrophically and predictably, and then you point it out that again, listen, you don't have a single example of your way of life working out well for people. Somebody, well, that's not real socialism. That's not real communism. That was, it got overtaken. The message got mixed up. The people that did it, that were in charge weren't, they didn't practice it the right way. But if we did it the right way, so let's give up all your rights now and try again.
Yeah, that's the excuse of Bernie Sanders. That's Bernie Sanders talking about Venezuela. It's Bernie Sanders talking about Venezuela in 2016.
Well, Venezuela would have been a resounding success if not for the imperialistic Americans and the capitalistic economy that came down there and took Hugo Chavez and put him in handcuffs and wouldn't let him do for his people.
Yeah, but he leaves out the fact that we actually cut off Venezuela and stopped doing anything with them. We didn't have business with them, and they killed their own people, and they starved their own people, and their own people, they cut the medication for those people, which is why measles and mumps have escalated there by 1,000%. And they are the center of the epidemic of measles and mumps in South America and introducing it back into America.
Well, somebody's just going to have to give up some of their pie so somebody else can have some more.
Well, the examples they always like to use is they like to use Denmark and Finland,
which aren't socialist.
Which neither one of them are socialist countries. They are very much capitalistic. Yes. Yeah, they do have some social programs, but they are anything but socialist.
Yeah. And they've said so themselves, and they called out Bernie and the rest of them saying, stop making this lie. It's not true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, they like to try to call out a lot of the Nordic countries and try to claim how socialist they are. And they're not. Okay, in fact, Canada isn't. Okay, yeah, Canada has some social programs. But Canada is far from socialist.
Trudeau would like it to be.
No, Trudeau would love it to be, but there's too much pushback. That's why they got a conservative side of their government.
Well, it's also why why Trudeau has pretty much taken everybody's guns from them.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the first steps leading towards. Because on the path towards socialism, you notice they always stop at authoritarian. So it's either an authoritarian or dictatorship that always takes over. In every one of these socialist nations, it always happens. They take away the guns and they become authoritarians every single time.
Well, he learned from his father. Fidel, that's what you do. And that's exactly what he did. So, and listen, at this point, I got Canada, listen, you did this to yourself. Really, you did this to yourself. And I watched something very interesting the other day as far as Canada, not to get off on too much of a sidetrack here. I watched a video from a Canadian citizen who was actually talking about the differences between Canada and the United States. And it mimicked something that I had said a long, long time ago, right here on this show, was that Canada didn't become an independent country until, was it 1992?
Mm-hmm.
Canada was founded as an arm of England.
Colony.
It was part of the Commonwealth of England.
Right. Yeah. It was, yeah. So they were founded basically under rule. where America was founded under rejection of rule. We were founded under rebellion. We were founded under violence. We were founded under the idea of screw you, I won't do what you told me. And that's the difference. And that it's inherent in the American gene pool to be resistant to tyranny. It's in our genes to resist, socialism. It's in our to resist authority. That's why, even the most peace-loving Americans who never have, who never bend the law can't stand cops, because the cops are, by an extension, an arm of authority. Americans don't like authority. We don't like being told what to do. Screw you. Canada, on the other hand, has been bound to capitulate since their founding. So whatever the people that they vote in by one vote lead, because there it's a democracy where it's, one vote is all it'll take to change the whole, culture of a country. Not an overview of everything, but one vote is all it'll take to change the whole country. You get 50.0001% of the people in Canada decide that they still want to be under somebody's thumb because that's how they were founded and that's the way they were brought up. Then that's the kind of government that you're going to get. They weren't, the people in Canada aren't resistors. They don't resist authority. They just go with it. So whenever they pass another law that says you got to turn this in, you can't buy that, you can't trade this, you can't do this, you can't do that, can't say this, you can't, what, they get away with it. The government gets away with it, and the people in Canada just roll over, play dead.
No, there is the influence of America, and this is the beauty of America, and one of the reasons why we see the far left is so angry with America, is that we are having a positive impact. I can tell you that there's a couple of channels on YouTube where I've one Canadian YouTuber that I know, and I've spoken with her several times, and she's younger, she's in her 20s, and she's part of this movement, like the Canadian truckers, that are saying, no, we need to be more assertive and push back. Now, it's a big culture clash for them. It's very hard for them to have the trucker protest. It's very hard for them to say, I don't want to just obey the government. I don't think the government's doing the right thing. It's very hard for them. But they are there's a generation coming up in Canada, and I think a decent portion of it, that are saying, no, we can't keep going down this path.
I will be right back, guys.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that growing generation is going to find themselves disarmed and toothless.
Yeah.
They're going to find themselves disarmed and toothless. It's going to be it's like the revolution that took place in Iran. You get tens of thousands of people in Iran looking to overthrow their government because of
the Green Movement. You're talking about the Green Movement.
And if they don't have the means of protecting themselves and actually fighting back, they're going to get squashed. And this movement in Canada with all of these young people, well, you know what? Listen, you're a little late to the party. You're a little late to the party. Your parents should have been the people on the forefront of that movement, not you. Your parents should have been the ones that were, screaming out, cry freedom, cry revolution, and trying to do something, not you. You should be the people that are reinforcing freedom, not trying to attain it for the first time. However, if you're trying to attain freedom for the first time, don't turn in.
Sorry about that, folks.
Sorry.
Don't turn in shit. Don't talk about what you got. Don't talk about what you bought. Don't talk about what your grandpa left you in his will. Don't talk about nothing. Keep it to yourself until the time comes, because that's when you're going to need it. But they're just, I just hate seeing Canadians, bitch moaning and complaining now that their whole country's going to crap with itself, and they're the same people that voted it in. They're the same.
You got to remember, most countries don't know what it is. We are unique in being able to openly, and even though we're suppressed by the social media giants, even though we're restricted in the terms and the ways that we can speak, even as they are redefining words and changing the meanings to fit whatever the government would like it to mean, in our nation, we are the most free in being able to voice our objections, even with all those restrictions that we are absolutely suffering from all these sources. But you go to look at the people in the United Kingdom who I speak to on somewhat regular basis. I have some who are part of my streams from time to time. You look at Canada, you look at France and Germany. They don't have these freedoms. Australia and New Zealand, great examples as well. They don't have any of these freedoms. So when the youth are looking to say, and we do see the movement of the youth are saying, we want to be more like America, they don't know how to do it because it's never been done, because they've never had that right. And so they're getting stepped on hard. And the sad thing is the American government is so busy right now under the Biden-Harris administration. They're so busy trying to win the next election that they're not paying attention to the world, as the world is screaming right now at America, please lead us, show us freedom, show us that you're paying attention. We are absolutely, the Biden-Harris administration has forgotten about what's happening at the southern border, which we just saw. That's why there's 1,500 military troops, U.S. military, Marines and National Guard are going to the border because Kamala failed, because the entire southern border is a complete collapsed failure. And we know this for a fact. We have...
Just wait till Title 42 goes. 700,000 are amassed at the border right now looking to come in. And Biden sent down troops down to the border. He didn't send down troops to reinforce Border Patrol agents. He sent down these people to expedite the paperwork. They're all going to be stamping people's, asylum papers to let them come into the country and get lost here.
I know. And that's the example. But see, that's the example. We've seen that one of the primary goals of the government, it was created to do what the people can't do for themselves. That's the purpose of government in America. To do, I think it was Benjamin Franklin that worded it that way, that the government should only do what people cannot do for themselves. Part of that is, I believe, making sure that our borders are maintained. Biden has completely failed on that. He assigned Kamala Harris in March of 2021 to take care of it. She went to one meeting and she doesn't talk about it whatsoever. He's sending troops down there now. And while people are looking at this, they're going, well, see, he's doing something. Except, as you rightly point out, Frank, he's not putting them there to seal the border. He's putting them there to facilitate entering the nation illegally. Because he's failed. His policy is a failure. There is no way to look at it and say it has succeeded in any way.
It has succeeded.
Well, no, I mean, for what he promised.
Extremely successful. His policies are 100% successful. Every goddamn thing that he's done has been in accordance with destroying the country, which is his ultimate goal. It's the ultimate goal of the left. It's the ultimate goal of progressivism, of socialism, of communism. They've been able to succeed at doing what the Soviet Union couldn't do, what China couldn't do, what the Germans couldn't do, what Italy couldn't do, what Great Britain. He's able to succeed where every other country in the world has failed, and that is to bring down the United States, and that is the absolute point of leftifism. That's the only goal. That's the only goal they have. Every program that they institute is based in the destruction of the American ideal. It doesn't matter. We keep calling him a failure. And I said this way back when. I said, when Paul Ryan debated, because everyone's like, oh, Trump is going to destroy Biden in the debates. I was like, listen, Biden's not stupid. No. And I said this during the debates when Romney and Ryan were running. And everyone was like, "Oh, we're going to put Ryan in the he's going to eat Biden up in the debates." Biden chewed him up and spat him out at the debate over there. Biden is not stupid. Okay, he does what he needs to get by, he does what he needs to get past, and he lies on everything else. He's not stupid. He's not a puppet. Everyone says, "Oh, he's a puppet for Obama." It might have been the other way around. It might have been the other way around. Obama might have been more electable than Biden because Biden didn't create a track record. So he ran Obama's campaign from the basement. And now he's running it on his own. Biden's not stupid. He's not stupid. He wouldn't have been 45 years in politics, raking in millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars through all of these scams and schemes that he's been running over the years and been able to get away with it if he was stupid. How do you get your drug addict son, who should be a convicted felon 100 times over, on Air Force One, have nobody ever press charges against him and all the rest of this stuff if you're stupid? It's not stupidity. This is all part of an agenda. And until we all recognize that, we can sit here, bitch, moan, and complain all we want about they were doing this policy, they're doing that policy. This, well, why would they do that? Because it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. They're forcing America to take a dive. Why do you think China's buying up farmland in the United States? Why do you think America has so many natural resources on the government land, and that the United States government has leveraged those lands to be debt for China?
Among others, yes.
Okay. Our bloodstream, all of our natural resources in this country that we have are being used as the collateral for our debt. And then when they turn around and they say we can't pay our debt and somebody comes a knocking, then, well, it's time to cash in our collateral. Well, guess who's now owns 60% of the federal, what quote unquote federal lands, the lands that's owned by we the people. When our government leveraged against it to pay the debt for policies that they ran up without the American people knowing about it or approving it, it's because they're taking us over from within. And that's the whole purpose. When you remember that the left is communist, not socialist, it's communist, and their ideal is to fall under the UN blanket of communism, then you have it's like, boom, all of a sudden it all makes sense. It all makes sense. Why do we want to divide all the races? Why do we want to divide all the classes? Why do we want to divide everybody? Because a house divided will not stand. And as long as they can keep the American people distracted, devised, and not paying attention to who's behind the curtain, it's easy to take over from within. And remember, it was Stalin that says that America will collapse not from the outside, but from within.
No, it was after Stalin, but yes.
But
Brezhnev,
Khrushchev, one of them Chevs, I don't give a shit. Chevron, Chevy Chase, I don't care. Whichever one said it was right, was 100% right. The enemy is no longer at the gate. The enemy is at the helm.
Yes. I don't disagree with you, Frank. I think you're right, but I think it's the way to stave that off, the way to deal with this movement, this constant move to the left. And we are constantly moving to the left. We're moving so far to the left that the leftists can't keep up with it. That they wind up disowning their own people because they're moving so far to the left. They can't, no one in the left can keep up pace with it. And I think the answer to that is the more that we speak to younger people, in our generation, our age range, one, they need to speak up and say no, and this isn't right. And the younger people have to say, hey, what are our rights? Actually go back and say, no, not what they're telling me is the meaning today, the definition of our rights and freedoms today. What are they actually? Show me the original document. Let's look at what it originally said.
Yeah, well, you won't be able to do that because the kids today can't read cursive.
Well, yes, I know. And that's part of the problem.
It's part of the problem. And this is why the left, starting in the early 1930s and 1940s, this is why the left made instrides into the education system. This is why they made instrides into college. They knew that if they could control the youth, they could control the message in the future. Not control the message of the day, but control the message of the future. They took over the schools. They took over entertainment. They took over the media. Then they start taking over the corporations, and you see exactly what happens. The message is unified everywhere. I got friends of mine who are to the right of Rush Limbaugh that have kids that were to the right of them, sent them off to college, and within 9 months came back with purple and green hair, piercings in their face, hair to his head, tattoos across every goddamn thing, talking about how wonderful Bernie friggin' Sanders is. Okay, this indoctrination was started decades ago, and we're seeing the fruit. And you see how fast it's moving. It's because they planted weeds. They didn't plant trees that you could grow fruit from. They planted weeds that would eventually turn into a wildfire. And when weeds get planted, they grow out of control, and you can never eradicate them fast enough. So when you say the left has got to deal with the stuff, and it's happening faster than they could even assess it, because that sometimes they had no idea how quickly all that fertilizer was going to work. Now they're playing catch up with their own party, and we're back here going, oh, well, this policy and that policy, this policy. No, it's all of it. It's all of it. This has all been an agenda for 100 years.
Yeah, but you know what? One of the things I run into, Frank, and it's like when I was talking, I was doing the live stream earlier this week about the Marine, about the subway. I run into so many people who say it's too big, or they didn't take the time to find out more. They're going with headlines and a minute, maybe a minute and a half of news, and they're not bothering to double check anything, even though we know that the New York Times, NBC, Newsweek, we've seen that they have, they're plagiarizing the news, that they're making up news stories. We've seen that over and over again, but yet they still go to those sources and say, well, what they said it, and if they said that minute and a half blurb, that's all I need to know. And that's the problem, because when I'm doing the live streams, people will go say something and they're asking me a question and go, okay, so you only know part of the story. Here's the rest of the stuff you don't know. Here's the rest of the information that has either been denied to you or that you didn't take the time to find out. And very often you got to go outside the United States. BBC, Guardian, Times of Israel, Japan Times, Hindustan Times. You have to look outside the United States to find an answer to the thing that's actually happening, or things that we're not even being told about that are happening across the world, that are happening in America, and the rest of the world's talking about it, and American news media aren't talking about it, or they're massively editing it. Well, and that's the problem, I think. People think it's too big.
Well, as a journalist, you know the 5 W's.
Yeah.
All right.
Who, what, why, when. Yeah.
How? One W is missing. Why? Nobody asks the why in journalism anymore, because they don't want to ask the why. They go into a story looking at it and they go, the why is going to have to fit the agenda. We're going to write the why. The why is going to be the agenda, but not the why as to why it's really happening. If we had people understood what the why actually was, understand why when the media reports on why is Biden letting Title 42 expire? Why is Biden sending troops there? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? They insert their own why instead of asking why. Because
well, I want to
ask why, because they're being told why and they're being lied to.
I want to move back just a little bit, okay? Sure. And we're talking about how the left was overtaking the school systems and the education process. It wasn't just the left. The right was being just as destructive to the educational process as well, because both sides wanted a population they could control, that they could manipulate, that didn't know how to research for themselves. And I'm specifically saying this for a reason, okay? The No Child Left Behind program was enacted by Republicans.
Yeah, it was Bush.
Okay. There were other programs implemented by other Republicans, okay, Republican Congresses and so forth. And these programs were all designed, one, to take civics out of the classroom. Okay, very few schools and educational programs teach anything about civics anymore. Okay, the other thing is it took the ability to research, the skill of researching topics, researching um, things away from people. Okay, the students were taught how to memorize for a test because that was the whole focus, was passing the test, how well you did on the test. Okay, it was no, I mean, you don't hear about kids having to do term papers anymore. You don't hear about kids having to do research papers anymore. Okay, all you hear about is memorizing for the test.
Yeah, that's what they focus on. By the way, everyone, to my left and probably your right on the screens, I'm not sure how, I always forget which way it turns there, is Alex. Alex has joined us now. You guys' camera working?
Yes, I finally got it working.
He is right down there, guys.
How y'all doing? My name's Alex.
We got to have 9 windows open on here one day so we could do the Brady Bunch song.
Okay.
You know what? Just give me a screen grab. I'll make a meme out of it. It'll be fine.
Oh God, I can't imagine.
For those who don't know, Alex is a good friend of the Liberty First Foundation, a good personal friend of mine, traveling companion, all around wonderful guy, United States veteran of the war against terror. This man is highly accomplished, highly acclaimed, and a very good and decent friend, and one hell of a parade leader. So,
we're not going to talk about the last part of it, but you are far too generous, Frank. Thank you so much, Mike.
He's the only person I know that could withstand sleeping in an RV for 5 days with my snoring and not put a pillow over my face.
Yeah, you had to put up a lot with from me on that trip too. Mike, it's good to see you again.
Always.
Good seeing you, Alex.
Anyways, don't let me interrupt. Please continue.
No, you were chomping at the bit in the background and on the comments. Go ahead.
Well, just a couple of things.
We've been talking about a bunch of stuff, so go for it.
Well, I mean, what was the last topic you guys were talking about? You guys jumped around.
Mike, we're talking about education.
Yeah, about the education system. Okay, so yes, you know, the education system here at the local level needs to have the most interaction with local parents. I mean, that's where you get the most change in the schools. When
you mean domestic terrorists?
No. Well, that's what the FBI and DOJ would classify us as domestic terrorists. But in reality, concerned parents going, I don't want you teaching my kids this stuff. I don't want this material in the library. And honestly, whether you agree with it or not, the local community, in my opinion, should have the right to say whatever that is. And you know, I come from an area that used to be very blue collar working class, has now become more of a tech area. I mean, Ohio, as everybody knows, I'm from the wintry state of Ohio. And, you know, it's become very tech centric. We have was it Dell or Intel microchip plant that's popping up near Columbus. It's Cincinnati itself. It's getting really tech heavy. There's a lot of different influences, even in the state of Ohio. So local people need to be able to tell their school boards or the representatives, this is what we want our kids taught. And then people are going to move and change as they wish. But looking at the demographic just for Ohio, this is the best way I can describe it is Trump country. These are people who they want a good education for their kids. These are for the most part, a lot of which Christian conservative value people. These are people who have lost kids, fathers, grandfathers in every major world war. These are people who, understand the value of sacrifice and loss. I mean, these are people who understand what it's like to have 10 feet of snow dumped on you on a random Monday. Mike, I know you know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
So, people in Ohio have different requirements than people in New York and California.
Well, here's does anybody know when the United States Department of Education was actually established?
I don't, honestly.
On the
thought it was.
that was on the Nixon.
I thought it was the 60s, 70s, somewhere in there.
1972.
There you go. There you go.
It was under the Carter administration.
But it's become an institution. And yet
No,
another-
72
it has.
Yeah, it's become an
Well, yeah, it would
institution
be
that's
Carter.
failed us. And, you know, Ohio is
But-
going to be another one of those states that is right about to initiate the Backpack Act. I believe it is. Basically, it just child tax credit when it comes to schooling. The money for school follows the children. You're going to see an explosion of privatized schools, pod schools, homeschooling schools, things like that, and they're going to rip these kids out of the public education system that just trains them to be, you know, I don't want to say stenographers for the government, but just people who bend the knee to have no critical thinking. They're going to rip them out of that environment, and they're going to teach them how to think and how to interact. I have employers here now that I talk to who are specifically looking for homeschool kids because they're far more intelligent and far better socialized than even public educated schools kids
Now,
pre-COVID.
I want to go back to, Carter instituted, or during the Carter administration, I should say, the Federal Board of Education was brought online. It would take 2 other presidents before that would actually start rearing benefits for the federal government. Okay. It was too early for the Board of Education or the Department of Education to really have an impact on education at the state level or even at the local level under the Carter administration. Under the Reagan administration, they backed off of the Board of Education. The Board of Education was there to support schools, but it wasn't there to tell schools how to do things.
Can I interject for 1 second? I'm sorry, I don't want to break up your chain of thought, but maybe the infrastructure for the education system for the states, purely hypothetical, was put in during the Carter administration, and then the Reagan administration being able to back off didn't affect the state and local level Department of Education, the creation of the school boards, the creation of the state school boards, legislation that went along with it. Sorry, just quick interjection. I'm sorry if I broke you up.
No, it was still too early. Okay, Board of Education's brand new under the Carter administration. Okay, it doesn't have enough power yet. It doesn't have the clout yet. Under the Carter administration, the Reagan administration comes in, and they backed off of a lot of the policies that Carter had put in place. Okay, one of them being education. That's why during the Reagan years, education was still primarily ran by the states. Okay, states decided what their students needed and so forth. Under H.W. Bush, that started to change. And we started seeing programs like No Child Left Behind. You started seeing the Department of Education becoming a lot more involved in the promise or in the role of determining what schools were going to teach and how they were going to teach it.
Yep.
And that's why students that were in school in the 80s were still getting civics educations. They were still being taught about the United States Constitution. They were still being taught of how government operated, how government worked. You get H.W. Bush in there, you start with the No Child Left Behind and a lot of those programs, and you start seeing a lot of these things about how government works being pared away from the schools, taken out of the schools. You start seeing history being less emphasized and more going towards social studies instead of history. You start seeing other programs being instituted in schools, and you start seeing a lot more getting towards gearing people away from being able to research and critically think towards being programmed on how to take a test.
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the shifts that I'm starting to see with parents these days is that they're shifting their kids away from what to think, but how to think.
And that's what you used to be taught in school, was how to think.
Right. And those are discerning parents. Those are people who are like, something's not right here. I need to look into this. Those are the people who are teaching those skills onto their kids. And one of the things I think would be a great idea is to expand a population of discerning parents. And that is, you got to start with breaking the glass for them, showing them that.
Now, here's the thing. Okay. My generation, which I graduated in 1985, was one of the last ones to be taught the Constitution, taught civics, taught government. Okay. You go to the next generation, and we start seeing that that's starting to back off. Parents are, when I was in school, parents weren't involved a whole lot. They didn't need to be.
Yeah, they trusted their institutions.
Right. Okay. Because the institutions were ran more locally, so they could, because local people tend to have the same values, the same thought processes.
Yep.
When you get everything up at a high level, as in the federal government, it's too far removed. Okay, and that's why we're starting to see parents starting to talk up.
Well, here's the thing. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
As the generations went on, parents didn't know how to become involved. And parents also were losing the skills of critical thinking. Okay. I'm a grandparent now, and my generation was one of the last ones that were actually taught critical thinking, taught research skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You start getting further and further away from that. And now we've got parents that weren't brought up with those types of skills. They weren't taught those skills. So it's up to the grandparents that actually need to be teaching these skills.
And where are the grandparents ending up?
They taught their children enough of these skills outside of school.
Yeah, but
that's one of the issues.
Well, one of the things we have to do right now, I think it's very important. A component of freedom is the ability to critically think, to ask questions, and to understand the consequences of those questions and those actions. We're losing that because we're teaching kids to be rote, to be able to pass the test, not to actually understand or comprehend the information. And then when we have the pushback, which are PTAs, where parents are saying, what books are you teaching our kids? Why are you teaching them about sexuality in kindergarten? When we have that pushback, now we have Merrick Garland and the DOJ trying to find a way to demonize them. By the way, in the over 1,000 cases the FBI has investigated since Merrick Garland got on the job, they have found 0 cases, credible cases, for the FBI in investigating parents across America. There is no case where they've been justified in what they're doing. But the problem is, we have to understand one question. Why is the DOJ, why is the FBI investigating the PTA? It's not because parents are doing anything wrong. Otherwise, they would have a series of cases where they'd be able to present it to us and say, see, this is what's going wrong. There's nothing going wrong. They've been looking for it. It doesn't exist. So if it's not because there's a wrongdoing, why is this happening? Which is what the media should be talking about right now, which is why social media must. It's because there's a different agenda that's going on, and that agenda is allowing kids to think and also to be properly educated, not indoctrinated. And the second part we should be asking along with that is, since the FBI is wasting time and money looking for a crime that doesn't exist, and the only reason why they would do that is to promote a political ideology, then the root of the problem here is actually the Department of Education. We don't need it. It should not exist. It is the cause of the problem. When the government is interjecting itself into local communities and saying, it's no longer saying every kid should be able to read and write, but rather you should read this material and you should write about this political ideology and you should obey this message from the government. That's what the problem is. It's the Department of Education instilling that as an overlord onto our kids. You remove that, that gives parents and children the opportunity to think and to communicate and to do more than just rote memorization. And I think that's important. And I don't think enough people are talking about that because we're focused on, well, it's Merrick Garland. He's not really the problem. He's the symptom of the problem.
All right, I have to interject here for just 1 second.
Sure.
Because Merrick Garland does have a financial stake in everything ESG. You look at his son-in-law, everything that, he has a lot at stake in, and he has a personal vendetta against all things Trump, all things MAGA. We all know what happened with the Supreme Court. That's a lot of vendetta for these petty tyrants that we're dealing with right now. And I had an interjection before, but actually no. Vas, you were a Marine, right?
Yeah.
So you understand obviously you understand Marine values, you understand Marine leadership, and you understand you understand how important faith was to Marines. Even if they weren't faithful, they understood how faith meant to the people of that faith, right?
Well, faith is more than just religion. You have faith in the Corps, in the fellow Marines. So faith is more than just religion, and every Marine, I think, understands that it's not just religious, but that is also a component of it. Yes.
And I'm not talking about religion at all. I'm talking about faith.
Okay. Yeah, faith in my fellow Marine. Yeah, absolutely.
And coming from a Christian point of view, and I hope YouTube doesn't take us down for me just saying that, I think a lot of what we're dealing with right now with the attack on faith, period, the only people they won't go after are Muslims because, well, politics, is for control. I mean, there was a story today, I believe it was a Boston Latin Mass Vatican Church. I'm not Catholic, so I'm sorry if I'm screwing this up. Anyways, it was attached to a hospital, and it came out that they would not receive Medicare and Medicaid payment reimbursement if they did not take out the internal flame that was located in their church. That was a representation of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. You see that the education system and the large boot of the government, which is the DOJ, is attacking people of faith, period.
Well, they're attacking people of faith because it's not because of the faith.
It's because
that, again, is a symptom.
Control.
It's a control, and they're a target, but why are they the target? Well, because we see very much people who have a belief outside of the government, where they're not just in obedience of anything the government says. That tends to be everyone outside of the far left. The far left believes their religion is government. They're atheistic. They're more likely to be atheists. They're more likely to reject religion, but they're more likely to obey and follow religiously their progressive ideology. That's their religion. And so what the DOJ is doing is, the Christians are just the outward example of this oppression towards anyone not obeying what they're told. Anyone who would dare question is a target. Christians being the obvious target of that and the example that's being used. It's kind of like when the Christians were thrown into the lion's den. They were fighting against religion in general. The Romans were fighting against anyone who would oppose their religion, and they threw them into the lion's den. Jews, Christians, everyone. They didn't care. But the Christians were the example of that. But it went against them because the Christians continued to resist, leading to part of the downfall of the Romans. We see that very much same example happening now. Again, the Christians are the example that's being made, and how they're reacting to it could lead to a counterculture, a pushback.
Oh, that's exactly where you're right now, because you have a new kind of Christian. I'm not talking about Catholics. I'm talking about your basic non-denominational
Christian as Christian total, all the sects within the religion.
Right, all the sects within a religion. You have a newfound understanding that the individual has a relationship with God. They have, it's like a father-son relationship now. It's less.
Yeah, but the reason why they're targeted, I think, isn't because of the religion. It's because
of the
you have an obedience to something that isn't government.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
what the Department of Education is enforcing right now, which I think is what Mike was just mentioning and is encapsulating, is that we have been training kids for decades to obey the government, to have obedience to the government without question, blind obedience, like the current wave of that now. And we keep changing the wording on it. Today's wording is now affirmation. You have to have blind affirmation because the government said you have to affirm. And if you're not affirming, then you're the bad guy. Well, affirmation, blind affirmation, is otherwise known as faith. It is a belief which does not rely on fact for that belief. That's faith to an extent. That's one definition of faith.
It's the exact definition of faith. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just want to say this one last thing and I'm done. Faith is the one thing that the government can't kill. And that's it.
Well, a lot of governments would like to. I mean, this is not new.
They try hard.
They do. And notice what types of governments are we famously and historically and empirically have been known for destruction of religion? Communism. Communism, it is a core tenet.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back and make a correction. It wasn't 1972. It was actually October 1979 when the Department of Education was established.
Okay.
Get your cross and get on the hill.
However, that was the second time the Department of Education was established. The first time was back in 1867 when Andrew Johnson signed legislation creating the first Department of Education. Now, its purpose was to collect information and statistics about the nation's schools. But due to concerns that the department would exercise too much control over local schools, the new department was demoted to an Office of Education in 1868.
Aww.
Okay. In the 50s, the federal government started funding education and various programs, primarily because of Sputnik. They wanted to, the federal government was pumping money in schools, primarily in science and math programs, because of the space race. Then Johnson expanded federal funding during the war on poverty and trying to, quote unquote, make school more accessible for the poor. Okay. In the 70s, efforts to help racial minorities, women, and people with disabilities and non-English speaking students gain equal access then led to Congress enacting the Department of Education in October of 1979. The actual Department of Education didn't begin operations until May of 1980.
But it's always been, here's the problem. The more we grow government, the more corrupt it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that many tendrils out and so much influence that's in so many hands, it makes it very easy to be corrupted. And that's why we see government wants to constantly grow itself. Government wants more power and more control. And invariably, governments become more and more authoritarian given more time. And with the exception of revolutions that occasionally happen, that reset it backwards a bit, and then it starts that process again. We've seen that through history over and over again in every country in the world.
Now, as far as the Office of Education in the 1860s, had a budget of $15,000 and 4 employees handled education fact-finding. By 1965, the Office of Education had more than 2,100 employees and an annual budget of $1.5 billion. As of mid-2010, the department has nearly 4,300 employees and a budget of $60 billion.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And again, they're the problem because they are creating a youth that are indoctrinated not just in progressive ideology. That's an outward expression of what really is happening. The indoctrination, and I'm at fault for arguing this case myself, because often we will target the obvious thing right in front of us, which is the indoctrination towards progressive ideology, towards a socialist ideology and destruction of the Constitution. But really what they're indoctrinating is obedience. And that's worse because the obedience doesn't take into account anything else other than you've been told, so you will do, and no more and no less.
I will be right back, guys.
And that leads to an authoritarian government every single time.
So
because the people don't know any better until they fight back.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't, and that's actually perfect segue. My argument, and Frank can attest to this because we've been talking about this for years. It's not the government that's the solution. It's the people that are the solution. The Second Amendment is what protects our ability to speak, and spreading gun culture, good, responsible gun culture across the country, and getting. I'm going to say something radical. YouTube's going to shut us down. I'm sorry, guys. Get back to a point to where we're teaching kids how to shoot guns at school. University of Akron downstairs, they have a shooting club, or they have a range. Everything from kids going to the college to people going through ROTC and the OPATA police department could train in that range. There was a facilitation of responsible gun rights through gun community, through the gun culture. We are, like Frank said, we are a country of rebellion. We don't want to be told what to do, but we want to have social cohesion. And that's one of the things that we've lost over the past couple of years is social cohesion. And I'm seeing that every single day. And just everything from the subtle anger and frustration and kind of how humans treat each other. And I'm in a pretty chill place. Ohio's pretty chill. We got to deal with some pretty rough winters, so we tend to stick together. I can only imagine what it looks like in the fair weather states like California and LA. We need to have we can't rely on the government to tell us what to do. That's where everything falls down. We need our culture to tell us what to do. Mike, you guys up in New York, you guys will have a similar culture as us. Same thing with Frank in the Carolinas. Vas, sorry, I don't know where you are, brother. But
upstate New York.
Okay, so we all would have the same culture, but we don't have the right to tell what the psychos in Portland, who have legalized and decriminalized all drugs and they have open air drug markets, how to live. but they damn sure aren't going to tell us how to live, and they damn sure aren't going to tell us how to protect our friends, our family, and our community. So we need to create the culture that tells our politicians how to behave. That's the difference between.
We already have that.
No, we
Alex,
don't.
we do, because again, I've mentioned this before, our politicians are servants first, foremost, and forever. That's their oath.
That's what their oath is, and that's what we believe. That's not what they believe, in my
No,
opinion.
no, they don't believe it because we're not enforcing it, because there is an 88% re-election rate. They have no reason to believe it because the empirical evidence in front of them is, even if they go absolutely outside of whatever their local community believes, they get reelected. So there's no reason to have obedience to or be a servant to the people. That's why we have people like Chuck Schumer now saying, well, I'm telling you what I've done and you're going to say yes. That's why we get that backwards neo-noble kind of outlook that we're now going through. And we need to remind people of that. You know what I would love to see that I think would be a great help, besides getting rid of the Department of Education and shrinking the government overall? I think that would be fantastic as well. I think the thing that would help a lot is mandatory military service. I haven't talked about this in a long time. It's been a while since anyone's brought it up. We need the discipline and the focus and the experience that the military brings into our communities, because it will focus people into understanding what it is to have faith in your fellow person, to rely on them for your life and for the capabilities of whatever you're trying to do. It would teach people how to be self-reliant and have the ability to live their lives and to, yes, obey authority, but also to understand what happens when authority is misused.
All right, Mike, I'm gonna have to do a Mike Vasquez on you.
Go ahead.
Since you always do it on me.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely freaking not. And I'm not saying that military duty is bad. Believe me. As somebody who signed his name to that paper 5 different times and got rejected every friggin' single time. No. I love the military. I love everything the military does, that it stands for. You know the things that I've done on my personal life.
I know.
Help the guys and girls in the military.
Right.
A long history of military in my family. Have you seen today's military, Mike?
Well, that's another problem. And yes, I saw the drag Navy that we have. The drag Navy. Oh my God. Yeah, I see that.
This is how absolutely ahead of the times the village people were.
I know.
That they wrote in the Navy in 1977 and made it a chart-topping song that would become proven true in 2023 when the United States Navy confirmed that they have an enlisted sailor who's a drag queen that they're now paying to promote recruitment efforts for the United States Navy.
On TikTok, which is banned.
Whatever the hell it is.
It's on TikTok.
All right. You got him. When you got this jerk-off chief of staff who doesn't really give a shit about anything except exploiting the tools of the military for a leftist agenda, I would never make mandatory conscription a part of our society unless you had a complete and truly separate, where politics had absolutely nothing to do with military whatsoever, and it was just a matter of service, country, and that's it. Service and your country. Those are the two things the military's got to be concerned with, not TikToking, not swinging balls around in front of kids, not having drag time story hours on Edwards Air Force Base, none of the rest of this crap.
No. And let me clarify. Let me clarify, Frank, because you're right, and I agree with that, because I can't stand that we have a drag Navy. I can't stand that we have my two moms fuzzy warm ads. That's stupid. This is why The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force have all missed their targets, and they're going to miss their targets in 2023. They've already announced that. The Marines are the only ones who are going to still hit their target, and that's because the Marines, for the most part, are rejecting this infusion of politics into the military, because that's not what the military is about. When I'm saying I want mandatory military based on, like when I went into the military, like when my father went into the military, like when many of us have served in the military, in that it's not about politics. It's not about making someone feel nice. It's not about trying to let a bunch of individuals get together on an army base. No, I'm talking about the true mission of the military and the true discipline that comes from that training.
Right.
Not this new thing that I don't even know what it
I'm
is.
pulling a Voss on both of you guys right now because I agree with both of you to a certain degree, but I don't think it definitely shouldn't be a forced military service, and I don't think it should be a forced national service. I think there should be a requirement, and this is going to get pretty extreme here, guys, so hold on to your buttholes. A requirement to vote within your state for state service. I don't care if you're taking care of folks at an old folks home. I don't care if you are in the National Guard, Air Force, whatever. It doesn't need to be a forced military service. It needs to be some kind of service to where you now have a stake in the game.
Actually, we have that. Every state has a militia.
And no, but every state has every militia in the state in the country is targeted and persecuted.
No. There's state-run militias. New York State has a New York State militia, official government, New York State authorized militia.
But
there's a Florida militia. Every state has a militia in addition to National Guard, in addition to private militias.
Right. But I'm looking at it more as it should be something of a legal requirement. I don't know what that looks like, but it should be a point of pride for men when they turn 18 to go on to the Ohio State Selective Service and find a duty to do for 2 years. That creates a talking point and a link point and a point of connection between. Yes, ma'am. Was that over here?
Yeah, it's got to be you.
That's me.
Oh, okay.
Creates a linking point between everybody in the state, but we don't want the federal government involved, in my opinion. It should be required, but it should be more. I think it should be more social than legal. It should be, like I said, a point of pride for every man and hopefully woman to do something to give back to their community at the lowest level. City, county, state, national, if you're an idiot.
But to your point, that's actually what most mandatory militaries around the world and most of NATO, most of the EU have these mandatory militaries. It's actually very common around the world. And they do exactly what you're talking about. That's what they're used as, to do city works, to do local community works. It can function here, especially when we're stepping away from, and the big thing is no politics. One of the worst things that's happening to our military is we're introducing politics and using social experiments, and that's not what the military is there for.
Well, this is the whole point. This is the whole problem with trying to mandate that somebody do anything of any kind, is that you have somebody who's going to be at the helm of these organizations, no matter how innocuous or harmless that might seem. There's going to be, at this point in our history, a political motivation that's behind it. I mean, you look at even some of our great charities in this country, from the Red Cross, Wounded Warriors, all the rest of the stuff. When you start looking through the paperwork and you start reading between the messaging, you start finding the politics behind it. And anytime that you try and put a list of things together, it's okay, well, let's have everybody do 2 years of this or a year of that or 6 months of this or whatever. Oh, and you pick your course. It's pick your poison. Every one of those courses has already been poisoned by something or somebody with somebody's agenda, whether it's left, right, or whatever the case is. So having anybody I think it would be great if you want to mandate anything, mandate everybody read the goddamn Constitution. Study the goddamn Constitution. That's what you should be mandating.
Yeah.
If you're going to mandate anything, have somebody read the Federalist Papers. Have people read them. Read Common Sense. Read some of the founding documents. Read
the Anti-Federalist Papers.
Read them both.
Yeah. Well, both sides of it.
Yeah.
Encourage people to make up their own minds, their own decisions, void of the politic of the day, void of all of that. But you're never going to have that happen now because everybody's going to push their agenda, whatever their agenda is. And
now,
I'm sick of all of the politics in every goddamn thing. It's insane.
And here's the thing, okay, is politics is injected in everything, but here is a story by the Atlantic. And Atlantic is, as we all know, extremely left-leaning.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Should be the
So the Atlantic says less than 1% of people are politically active in the United States. And they break it down, okay? 23% of people donate money to a community organization very often. 44% somewhat often, 16% not very often, and 17% not at all. Percentage of people volunteering in the community. 24%, 41%, 15, 19. Share your opinions with people you know through email and social networks. Okay, in other words, speaking in the echo chamber. 32%, 31%, 14, and 23. Okay, right there is only one where it tends to be more engagement. Purchases based on a company's business practices or issues on positions. 24%, very often, 35, 14, 25. Attend community meetings or town halls. There, where less than 50% of people do it even somewhat often.
Well, Mike, I don't mean to side rail you here, but that last one you just said, make purchases based on a company's business practices and issue positions, that lines up perfectly with what we're looking at right now with the whole Bud Light.
Yeah, cancel culture.
But the right, not the right, conservatives, the polite society, let's say that the polite people are starting to realize how powerful their dollar is. I mean, are you guys familiar with the metrics on the whole Bud Light saga over the past this past week? I mean, their volume is down 26%. And I'm going to get this out right now real quick. It has absolutely nothing to do with trans culture. It has to do with the person that they picked who is insulting to both trans and women, who isn't trans and is literally faking it and is marketing. Hold on. One more thing. The biggest thing is he's marketing the beer to a culture that is 21 and younger. Kids who should not be drinking beer. I think, and I'm seeing a pattern here. When you target kids, people lose their ish.
Well, that's the whole problem that most people have with the entire recent trans movement.
Yeah.
Not the trans people, but the trans movement, which is political. And that political movement is targeted towards children, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, deciding to chop off their genitals, and schools and governments not telling parents about it and encouraging, and that's the blind affirmation we often hear about recently. That's the problem. Mulvaney is just a outward expression of that anger of that political movement, and people are upset with Mulvaney. Mulvaney's a caricature, which is insulting
he's an actor.
Yeah, and he is an actor. I can't say whether he is or isn't serious about this, but I can say is what we have seen of him is a caricature that is insulting to women, that's insulting to LGBTQAI+, whether you're a toaster or trans, doesn't really make a difference. He's insulting to all of them. He is appealing to no one.
Mhm.
And that's where the protest has come from. Protest is great, but protest is, we tend to, it's like the hashtag. Remember Michelle Obama had it was Boko Haram, and they captured a bunch of women that they
Bring
were
back
going to
our
sell as
girls.
slaves. Huh?
Yeah.
Bring back all girls.
Yeah. And she had that hashtag. And that's the problem, is a lot of people think a hashtag movement, or even sometimes a protest or cancel culture, when it's done in a more toxic manner, that would be cancel culture, is the way that you make change. It really isn't.
No, it isn't.
It's one way you can make change, though.
It's no, it's an expression of a change that's needed, but you need to follow that up with actual be involved with who's getting elected, what laws are being passed, um, giving feedback, be involved with the local politics, and then from the local to the state to the federal. It is just a part of that expression. If you leave it at just a protest, okay, Bud Light's going to, worst case or best case, depending on how you want to look at it, Bud Light goes out of business and the movement ends. And then what? That
And
doesn't
nothing changed.
Mulvaney goes on. The attack or the indoctrination of children continues. It's not enough. It's not the answer, but we have taught people, we have trained the youth to think, just because you put out a hashtag, just because you're on TikTok, just because you're complaining, you've done everything you needed to do. That's everything you can do. I'm sorry. No, that's the start of what you do.
You're absolutely right. And what you might not be seeing what's happening behind the scenes. People are talking to me about politics now because of Bud Light. People are
Good.
people who a month ago had no concern.
But again,
One thing, they're concerned because people are calling them homosexuals if they're drinking Bud Light in a bar, and they're confused. Merchants at stores are confused why Bud Light is not selling. They don't understand. So people are engaging in these political conversations now. And I know it's not huge, but it's just one little grain of sand on a heap.
but here's the thing. Okay. They're stuck back here on this level. Okay. Share your opinions with people you know through email and social networks.
Okay.
Okay. That's all the further they go.
For this one particular movement. Yeah, I agree. I know.
For any of it. Okay. Honestly, how many people are attending community meetings and town halls?
I'm seeing that number grow every week. It's not a lot every week.
Okay. It's still a very small portion.
Hey, people need time, brother.
Okay.
Time.
Write or call your elected officials. Again, according to this poll, very, very small percentages.
Yep.
Okay. Share your opinions on issues by publicly posting online, writing to a newspaper, or calling a radio program. Again, very small numbers.
Yep.
Donate money to a political or issue campaign. Again, small numbers. Volunteer on a political or issue campaign. Just dropping even more. Attend political rallies. Dropping even more. Okay. You look over here at this other side, you see less than 1% are engaged in 8 to 10 activities. 4 to 7, only a couple age groups and income classes are in double digits. Most of them are less than 10%. No. 1 to 3, there you start getting a little more involved, and you see by far most are not engaged in any of these. The most engaged are people making over $100,000 a year.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the most at risk.
Well, I think that the people who are most at risk have better things to worry about than politics, honestly. I think the people who have, I don't know, who care about other things and have some disposable income, who are willing to spend that kind of money in
Okay,
politics.
and as if we look at non-college, okay, people without college, less than 8% are engaged in 4-7 activities. Okay, again, 1 to 3 activities or no activities is by far the largest.
Well, yeah,
Non-whites, again, we're starting to see a little more push by non-whites in being more involved. 50 plus, you see they're a little more involved, but again, you see a lot of apathy. Overall, you're seeing not much engagement. Okay, 41% is not engaged at all.
well, yeah. As you see an economy go down, you're going to see less and less um, of the base in both sides being able to engage, and the poorest class of those demographics are going to be the less engaged, and the most affluent will have the time, energy, and money to spend on political campaigns or influence. And that makes perfect sense.
Okay, it's from here we're seeing that 18 to 29-year-olds, whites, college, making 100K a year are more engaged than people over 50, non-whites, non-college, and making less than 30K.
All right. Well, your age 18 to 19, that makes perfect sense because of social media and the way that the left has been able to engage the social media class. Whites, let's not even go there. College, yeah, that makes sense. Those are slightly more affluent, and 100K plus, yeah, that all makes sense. Everybody to the left of that total are people who are struggling, working 2 to 3 jobs, having their minds concentrated on keeping their home, keeping their family, keeping food in the fridge.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
Let me interject there for a moment, Alex.
Sure.
What you're looking at, these are the people further on the left, the ones who are less engaged in this. And again, the poll from the Atlantic is suspect because it is the Atlantic.
Of course.
So given that, but let's assume that they're correct in this. Those are the very same people who are told your vote doesn't matter. Your voice doesn't matter, that you can't change anything, that they have been told for generations, you just need to obey and don't worry, they'll take care of you, but you don't really have a voice, or you can't fight City Hall, you can't change the government, you just have to deal with it. That's the big difference, is you're seeing that more, the less educated someone is, the more they're likely to believe that, because they don't know the Constitution very well. They don't know about their rights very well, because we've, as we just discussed earlier, education department is saying, no, you don't need to talk about civics anymore. These are the people who've gotten the public school educations. They don't know more about their rights because no one's saying, let's talk about the Constitution today. Let's talk about your civics, how you can be involved in your government. They also don't know how to invest. We are seeing that is reflecting not what people could do. It's reflecting what people have been trained to do. These are the very same people who run around parroting whatever they saw, the headline in the news. They didn't read the article. They saw the headline. They saw 30 seconds, a minute of news coverage and think they know the whole story about what's going on in our government. And they don't bother to take the opportunity on the internet to actually say, someone just said this. Let me go find out what that is. What else is going on there? Just because you told me the headline, let me actually read this and maybe 2 other sources on the same subject. They just don't do that because they've never been trained to do that. They've been discouraged from doing that. And that's part of why we are seeing such a move towards socialism, towards a non-constitutional government, is because the majority of people have never been trained or told that it's perfectly fine to have an opinion or to how to even make that opinion and to then voice that opinion.
Well, yeah, of course, because our government prosecutes everybody who does decide to have an opinion on it. But, one thing I'll say is that, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince people that he didn't exist. And then the greatest trick that the system ever pulled was convincing people that they couldn't resist. We suffer from a, what's the opposite of glut? A serious lack
Dearth.
of, thank you, sir, a dearth of knowledge. We have people who are, I hate to say it, fat and happy. Life is good. Life is easy. Life is more difficult now than it has been before, but don't worry, we'll get through it. That something needs to happen to convince people to pay attention and to be far more civically minded than they are now. And that, in my opinion, is where the root cause of all this is proper civic engagement. Once we get back to that point, a lot of these problems solve themselves. Because I believe all my neighbors and I believe in the same stuff. We're just stuck in this political echo chamber where we don't agree on things and we don't talk.
I think most people tend, in my experience, the more that you actually speak to people about politics, once they start speaking about it and you get past the initial, oh, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or you're whatever the category is, the headline of the day. And once they get past their emotion that's been attached to that headline of the day, once you actually speak, most people tend to agree on the majority of the issue. There may be one or two aspects of it that they disagree with, but they tend to agree.
Yeah,
overwhelmingly.
Culture.
It's the categories and the headlines that we've been told you should be angry at X because it's X, not because of anything underlying, not because of any actual root cause. Most people can't point out and go, well, why do you not like X? Like if you would ask me, why do I do not agree with the progressive ideology? I have several examples, and I can go through a whole list of reasons why I don't agree with that philosophy. Most people can't. They can't even tell you why they support whatever political idea they have. Because they're convinced of this idea, they can't influence it, so they don't need to know. Which is the greatest lie people have been told.
That's right.
Your voice doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. You don't need to know, just obey. Which goes back to education, which we started with.
Go ahead.
And that's a lot of it. Okay, it is education. Okay, it is people not understanding how to actually be politically engaged, to be politically involved. They think that it's enough to go on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blah, 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 name any of the social media platforms, and that's enough. That's all the more politically engaged they need to be. Okay, and they don't understand that lots of times when they're engaging on any of those platforms, because of the algorithms and the way it's designed, they're speaking in an echo chamber. They're speaking to people that are of the same mind, and they are getting a false sense that their opinion is more widely accepted than what it may or may not actually be.
And that's the thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Another thing that is true on that as well is you don't see what the other side is saying per se. Okay. Or you're only seeing the very negative aspects of what the other side is saying. You're not seeing the areas where we have a lot of common ground, as Michael was alluding to. Okay. In a lot of areas, for the majority of America, we are very close on many of the issues.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're so stuck in our echo chamber, speaking just to friends that we're close with, just to our pals on social media, and in our different various echo chambers, that we don't see what's really going on.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why we are dealing with the strife they're dealing with right now, is because the powers that be are petrified that people like us and people like Antifa and BLM are going to go, hey, they're the ones who are messing up our lives. They're petrified of that, and if that can happen, then we can start solving a lot of the problems.
Well, that's one of the number one reasons why they try to keep everybody divided by every single subcategory that there exists. Because the more separated you can keep everybody on the minute things, the easier it is to keep everybody separated on the shit that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got 10 different groups are all pissed off about 10 different things, but that one thing that they're all pissed off about individually adds up to like this little bit of their lives, and
5%, yeah.
focused on that little bullshit thing that they're worried about, everybody ignores the other 95% of their life that's been taken over by and screwed over by the same people that have screwed over each of the other groups over there. I mean, we have, all right, look, you have the Second Amendment community, okay? Those of us in the Second Amendment community, big proponents of it. If you are somebody like myself where you're zero compromise, you see a picture that the left puts on the internet of a black husband, black wife with their 3 kids, and they're all holding semi-automatic rifles. And then the left says, this is the exact thing that Republicans are against. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I trained those people. I go shooting with these. Those are my friends. Those are the people I care about. I want to see everybody have guns. I want to see everybody be able to protect themselves. I don't give a shit about their color, their race, their creed, their color, their sexuality. What I don't care. I want everybody to have. Everyone in the Second Amendment community agrees that everybody has the fundamental right, but they try to make it as a wedge issue, and they'll turn around and they'll tell another group, like a minority group, the Second Amendment culture is old racist white guys that want you to be subservient, that want you to be and you say they'll call you militant, they'll call you this. No, I call them my friends. I call them range buddies. People I'll trade ammo with. I don't care. They'll try to divide people on these little tiny little issues instead of everybody stepping back, looking at the picture and going, you're the people that fucked everything up. If we all realized who the culprit really is, like at the end of the Scooby-Doo cartoon, oh, it was really that guy. Maybe people will wise up a little bit, but they won't, because everybody's got too much invested in their own personal politics to become invested in the larger politic, and that's life itself. They're only concerned about their little pet project, their little pet thing, whatever. The Liberty First Foundation started out in a room full of guys and girls who were gun people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Started out as gun people. We don't bill ourselves as a gun organization. We bill ourselves as a civil rights organization, because as many of us are concerned about these things are as many people that are concerned about being able to use one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Use these things. We care about all of our civil rights for all of our people. One thing brought us together, and we all found common ground in the Liberty First Foundation to be able to fight for all of the rights that are inherent to each of us. That has to happen in society. People have to look at the one issue that they care about and see how it relates to other issues that other people care about. And maybe we can find issues we all care about. And then maybe, just maybe, we can come together on those things, and there'll be less division and more inclusion, and you won't have so many problems.
Well, I agree with that, and people have to understand you have to be involved. You have to be active.
Well,
I'll give you an example.
Well, this was getting to my point real quick.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at on Facebook. I live in an HOA. There's about 120 houses in my HOA, and it's a smaller neighborhood within the Charlotte area. It's called Mint Hill. Somebody posted up a thing that said There's a mint. It's gotten to the point down here in North Carolina where if you have a 4 foot by 4 foot space that you want to put a mailbox on and you don't get there in time, somebody's building a condo on it. It's building down here like it's insane. It's insane. Well, that was the thing about on this thread is somebody said, hey, there's a board meeting coming up next week. They're talking about a new subdivision in this one area where it used to be farmland, a couple of miles away from my house here. Now, you remember, I'm in the city, but I got 600 acres of wildlife preserve right behind the house. There's farmland sporadically placed all over the place, but it's been being picked off little by developers. 75 comments on that thread by about 60 different people. You know, you had a lot of people commenting in comments. Of the 60 people that commented on the thread, I went through it. Well, you guys were all talking about this. I was reading through all of them as quick as I could. Out of 60 people that commented, 55 of them said, don't even bother going to the town meeting. It's not worth your time. They don't listen to you anyway. You can't fight City Hall.
That's a setup.
They don't care.
That's a setup.
No, this is 55 people who are all saying, don't even bother going. These are residents of the community that in one breath are complaining about how overrun the community has gotten to the fact where we're here for 4 years. 4 years ago, there was no traffic here. 4 years later, I go to the end of my street where there's a stop sign. I'm stuck there for 10 minutes waiting for the cross traffic to die down.
I know that.
Circles on either end of it. They don't have a stoplight, so there's no predictable traffic pattern that you can go by. They put these traffic circles in that are very random. So just when you think you got a break on one side, you got 10 minutes of traffic in the other direction. 10 minutes. So it's very hard. Everybody here is getting annoyed at how difficult it is to commute around here. And the fact that houses are going up like crazy. And the same people who are pissed off are saying it doesn't bother to doesn't even make sense to get involved. Doesn't even make sense to get involved. Nobody wants to get involved because nobody listens to you. But they'll spend 20 minutes or an hour on a Facebook thread, bitch, moaning and complaining back and forth to one another, but they won't jump in a car on Tuesday night, drive down to City Hall or Town Hall when they have this meeting and express their outrage. And then they won't go to the restaurant that all the board members tend to frequent after it. Because after the village board goes, they meets and they ignore everybody, they go to the local town pub and have dinner together and pat each other on the back on how wonderful a job they're doing.
Well, again, that's because people need to be involved. But
it's they've learned. People have been fed the idea of apathy. This idea that you can't fight City Hall has become so prevalent that nobody even enters the ring anymore. Nobody doesn't go to the arena. Nobody doesn't train. Nobody doesn't do anything. If you're going to use boxing analogies, let's use them. Nobody does anything anymore to fight back. All they'd rather do is expel their energy and complain after being a victim than expressing their points of view and being a victor. They would rather one happen than the other. And it's the same whether you extrapolate that from a small community like mine to a national conversation. People just don't care because they feel they can't win. And this has been drummed into people for the last 100 years. You can't win. You can't win. So they don't even try.
But see, and that's what we're seeing now with the new generation of what I'm showing on screen right now is Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And I put into Chat GPT, as you can see here, who are the Liberty First Foundation. And it comes back and says it doesn't recognize us. But at the same time, if you switch, and where is it? Come on, give me the other. Is it going to let me do this? No, it's not doing it the way I want it to do. Hang on, because I want to point out that why is it not letting me? Okay, it's not doing it the way I want it to do it. But so that was Chat GTP. But let me show you this, because that's not the only answer. See, people will see that and they think, well, that's the only answer that exists.
Well, it shouldn't. If it's truly scouring the internet looking for that information, there's
then
over
it will find this
places that tell you exactly who we are.
I know, and that's what Gipper does. And that's why and I'm using this as an example for people who say, well, I can't do anything or I don't know. It's here. Here's another AI which has been created. ChatGTP is created in part by Google and funded by Google, and uses the Google search engine, their algorithm, which is exclusive. It hides information. And I'm showing you live. This is what Gipper, which is another AI, has a different program. And we come straight up and it says it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to defending and promoting conservative values and principles. That's something that ChatGPT wouldn't tell you. And I'm pointing that out for people to understand. Your voice they're taking advantage of us. They're manipulating us to be able to hide information. And one of the biggest things they're hiding from us these days is the fact that your voice does matter, and that you do reach people, and that you can have an impact, whether it's at an HOA or whether it's at your local city government. And people have to just be reminded that you can have this impact. How did we get into this little tiny square? Well, there we go. That we can have this impact. But you have to be active about it. You can't just blindly accept, because if you're just blindly accepting, then you're going to get nothing, because they don't want you to. You're being told the reason why 55 people, I can't say all the 55 people for your HOA example. Some of those people have a vested interest in not having people show up, because it makes it easier to pass whatever they want. And if you believe you have no voice, you are giving up the opportunity to make a change.
Well, I have the perfect scenario to remind these people that your voice can be heard, because Vass, you remember a while back they were talking about opening up a juvenile correction facility in Shenango County, New York. And where did they target it? Bainbridge, New York.
Yeah.
My upstate New York town.
Right.
Okay. Now, in that town, we have the old Elmer's Glue factory. Used to be the bottling plant for Elmer's Glue. They owned two different, they had an office building by the railroad tracks, and then they had a bottling factory that had its own spur right off the train. About 10 years before the idea of the prison, Ford Motor Company came in with a proposition. They wanted to buy, because they knew that Elmer's was going to be getting rid of that plant at one point or another. Ford Motor Company came in and said, we want to build an engine. We want to buy that property, and we want to build an engine building facility over there, not a manufacturing facility, an assembly plant.
Right.
They wanted to have the spur for the railroad come in, bring in the engine components, and have all the engines being produced there. And that was supposed to be for Ford Racing, where all the high-end engines were going to be built, and they were going to bring like 700-800 jobs to the town. And in a town of 4,000 people,
that's huge. Yeah,
700-800 jobs is huge, and they would all have been union jobs. Not that I give a shit about the union jobs, but the base salary of these jobs was probably going to be between $60,000 and $80,000 a year. Bringing it into an economically depressed town would have been huge, but the town and the board said, no, we can't have that. We can't have that. That's new money. That's new money. We're going to deal with the old money. And they wanted to just keep the town destitute, and that was it. 7 years later, New York State comes in and says, hey, we're thinking we don't want to build it in the town. We actually do want to, but we know you don't want it in the town. So we're going to put in the village, rather. We're going to put it within the town limits. We're going to put a juvenile detention center, and it's going to be for at-risk children that were, had run-ins with the law. It's a prison.
Yeah.
It's a prison. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a youth prison. And the town was overwhelmed with the idea of doing that, because it was going to bring 300 jobs to the town. Now, if you know anything about the prison system and the way that New York State runs it, especially the juvenile facilities, you don't open up a facility in a small town and say, we're going to hire 300 people, and then take 300 people and employ them in a town, in a prison. No, you don't do that.
Coming from outside.
You bring them from other prisons. You bring all the jobs, people from other prisons, because you have to have that prison manned by experienced people. and then take the older and pull those people off the waiting list for civil service jobs to fill those jobs in the cities.
Right.
Because a prison that has 1,000 employees can withstand losing 10 and putting 10 new people in, but you can't run a prison on 400 new people.
No.
So the town would not have seen a single bump in unemployment. Okay, would not have seen anything. What they would have seen would have wound up being, well, you know, the little kids who are going to be at this prison are all from New York City. And there's no good public transportation route from New York City to upstate New York.
Right.
Not to this area. They have to take Greyhound to Binghamton and then take a cab 45 minutes from Binghamton into Binghamton. Well, those little kids who get visited by their parents every other day, well, most of those parents are probably going to be on Section 8. We're going to be financially destitute because these kids are mostly from broken homes, impoverished communities and everything. They're not the Ivy League kids going to these things. These are kids from troubled homes and troubled neighborhoods, with troubled pasts, with troubled families.
Sure.
All those families are going to migrate to that area to be closer to the little kid, so that when the kid gets 18 and gets out of that, if they're not transferred to an adult facility, well, guess where they live now? They live in your little town of 4,000 people. And when you have 1,000 inmates being released every year because they turn 18, that's 1,000 inmates, 1,000 families, and everybody else. So the town is now going to become the same way if you look at everything around Rikers Island, which at one point was not an adult facility, but it was for troubled individuals. And you see what that's like. Well, they wanted to bring that there. The town board wanted it. One guy on the town board owned the property that the state wanted to buy. One guy on the town board owned the sanitation company that was vying for the contracts for the place. One guy owned the construction company that wanted to build, that won the bid to build the friggin' thing. Another one was a manufacturer who was going to supply the place with all their tables, chairs, beds, and all the rest of that stuff. So they were going to be outfitting the place. Another guy owned the food services industry that was going to wind up being contracted to provide the food for it. So the town board of 5 members, 4 of them had vested interest in getting that thing passed and to getting that thing built. They had a town board meeting, and a lot of people from the town showed up, and it was still going to pass. Then they had another meeting and another meeting. One guy showed up at one meeting and put a kibosh on the whole damn thing. Me.
All right, Frank, what'd you say?
Exactly what I told them here. I brought up the history of juvenile facilities and what happens to communities after they've been there for 10 years or more, and exactly what was showed. And I showed exactly what happened to the community itself as far as population, taxation, condition of the homes that are there, the crime rates that were there, tax statistics, and everything else. I brought all that information with me, and I disseminated it among everybody who was there. And then I asked everybody on the board the simple question that nobody wanted to ask them. Excuse me, can you tell me, Mr. Board Member, can you tell me what you do when you're not here on the board? Oh, are you going to sign paperwork that is going to make sure that your company, since you would otherwise have a vested interest, to exclude yourself from any bids from state contracts? Oh, I can't do that. I have to, my company, your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't matter because you all have a conflict of interest. All of you have a conflict of interest in it. The town killed it. The town killed it. And even though the town is still in the same shitty, impoverished condition that it was in back then as it is now, the town is still alive and the town is still
even worse
with it. But it's still limping along. Because they still, even though they defeated one enemy, still haven't learned enough to understand what are your good investments, what are your bad investments. No. And they still are looking for outside investments. Now, fortunately, from what I understand, some people have gone into the town, picked up some of the old distressed properties and are doing things with it, and they're going to bring some jobs to the community. And it's not old money, it's new money. New money is going to come into the town because they were hoping that Amazon was going to open up their distribution plant up.
Never was going to happen.
Oh, I know, but a lot of that new money came to the town on that hope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was never going to happen. Though.
And now but now the new money is there at least. So the people who have the new money there,
Yeah, that facility ended up being in Rochester.
yeah,
Yeah, it was never going to come here.
but the new money that did come in is now invested. They have to do something with it. So if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. These people are going to make the best of their investment, and they're going to try to help the town grow. But that's what it needs. It needs economic infusion to do it. But all of that would happen if there you go.
What year was that, Frank?
2018.
Uh,
I'm going to say 2017, 2018 is when it was being debated.
Headline that says 2018.
Probably
Okay.
7.
Look at this.
Actually, no, it had to be earlier than that because my dad was still alive. And I actually brought a couple of meetings to my parents' house because we had the room there. So we had a couple of meetings at my parents' house to do it. My father was like, "Why are you bringing all of these people here? I don't like people."
So,
did I forget how to read numbers? Did that say $600,000 for
yes.
a correctional facility?
Oh yeah, once a prison facility is closed, it's pennies on the dollar, brother. It's penny to
There's
land.
nothing you can use it for.
Oh, I could think of a few things.
Hundreds of uses. I want to be a missile.
But I want to get back. Okay. Why was New York State wasting money down there when they had a perfectly good facility that they already own, that was already built, sitting here in Chattagate?
I don't know. I would ask the concrete distributors and manufacturers. I see a lot of concrete there.
Because New York State has to constantly build to employ the state employees. They have to give them something to do. You can fix the roads once and make the roads better so that they would last 10 years, or you can fix the roads temporarily so they'll last 2. And guess what? They go with 2 because you got to have your state employees doing something.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the New York road construction folks here in Ohio during the pandemic doing their 2-year road maintenance program. It was a lot of fun. No offense, I told a lot of them to go to F back home.
They're not. Well, they do their job exactly the way they're supposed to. It's not supposed to be permanent. It's not supposed to be final. And just like with the prisons, and we can go through the drone testing site, which we spent $1.2 billion on because it was going to bring drones and that was going to be a home run. We spent God knows how much money on the hemp becoming the hemp capital of the United States, and that went completely bust. It's always these
Buffalo Billions, Tesla.
Yeah. And the movie theater is another one because we're going to be the East Coast Hollywood. The idea is we get these promises all the time. And just like what Frank was explaining, where we will have people who will tell you, your vote doesn't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Don't look into the issue. Just trust us when we tell you this is the right idea. That's a bad idea. And if you don't show up, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. And almost every single time, that's not the truth. What truly happens is whatever they promised is not what you're going to get. There's usually a bunch of additional problems going along with it. And there's usually an incentive for certain people to approve this, which is why they're saying it's a great idea. Yes, you should do it. By the way, don't show up. Your voice doesn't matter because it shrinks the number of people they have to convince to do what they say. They're counting on the fact that people aren't educated enough to make critically think about this, to look at the pros and the cons, so think about the consequences, a little bit of abstract thinking here. Oh, we did this. What happens next? The one thing that politicians never say, what happens next? You did this, and then what? Well, this would be great. Why? No, we can't. Well, you don't need to know that, or we're not going to explain that right now, or we're just telling you that. No, that's not good enough. Just because you promise that doesn't mean a damn thing, because I'm old enough to have seen every time you make that promise, it doesn't work. Gun control. We've got red flag laws. We're going to get rid of crime. Didn't happen. We have the SAFE Act. It's going to get rid of the crime. Didn't happen. Don't worry. We'll just add another law. It's not going to happen. Why? Because you're not doing anything that has consequence to the criminals. You're not changing anything. These are the problems. I like the way that looks, by the way.
I just
we
wanted to.
need to do that. We need to remind people.
Oh, Alex disappeared just as I was going to bring this on. It's getting on 11:33, guys. We've been at this for quite a while. Just wanted
2.5 hours.
Yeah, I just want to give everybody a little something to look forward to. I reached out to a good friend of ours named Gary Ramey. He's the CEO of Liberty Ammunitions. He had posted on LinkedIn about this new ammunition that the company has produced called Overwatch. It's a lead-free self-defense round, and what caught my eye is instead of the conventional 9mm round being 119 or 123 grains, these are 72 grains, lead-free projectiles that travel 1,720 feet per second. A standard 9mm round travels at about 1,300 feet per second. I reached out to Gary and I said, "Hey, Gary, tell me a little bit about that round." He goes, "I'm not going to tell you anything about it." He goes, "Send me your address again." And he sent me a few boxes of this stuff. And as you can see from the share screen right there, it's non-steel. This is a 100% brass, copper projectile in a stained brass cartridge. I'm imagining. They don't tell you what the cartridge is, but it's non-magnetic. We're going to be doing some testing of this in the coming weeks as soon as I can get back to an outside range. According to some of the ballistic information I read, these things, if they hold true to what they say, are going to be some of the most amazing self-defense rounds I have ever fired. I looked at some ballistic gelatin testing that they have on their website. Unbelievable. So I'm going to be looking into getting some ballistic gelatin. And then he said, "You know what you do?" He says, get a couple of watermelons. You go shoot some watermelons with them. Those are a lot of fun. so it's a little something to look forward to. This is one of the reviews we got coming at you in the next couple of weeks, as soon as I'm back out on my feet and stuff like that. Also, wanted to let everybody know that we've been trying to formulate different things that we can do as giveaways here on the Liberty First Foundation and for our weekly roundtable, and for people that would like to participate in what we do and who come on screen and collaborate with us in the chat section. We wanted to start doing some giveaways. Now, when we look at all the things that we're allowed to give away, there are certain things we're not allowed to give away and certain things that we are. So we decided that we were going to produce some of our own things. So what we've done is employed the services of a 3D printing farm, and we're going to be producing letter openers that we're going to be sending out to everybody who joins us on the show and comments. We're going to be collecting some information for everybody so we can send stuff out. And our letter openers look a little something like this.
Very
little
nice.
Little World War I trench knives that'll be embossed with the L1F logo in it. And if you happen to own certain kinds of firearms, we might even consider producing you grip panels with the L1F logo on them.
And here comes the ATF.
They're grip panels. They're just grip panels. Or we might even send you a set with your own initials on them. So for those people that have, firearms that have replaceable grip panels, we will send you some really nice 3D printed, custom designed stuff just for you from us here at the Liberty First Foundation. And one of the other things we're going to be reviewing, you guys are familiar with my SIG P365. Well, this is about the smallest handgun that I'm comfortable shooting without fear of blowing my finger off. Well, something else had to find its way into the collection this week because the missus really, really liked it. And it's hiding behind my SIG P365.
Oh,
it's a little Kimber micro
cute.
1911. Yes, SIG. Yes, Peter, the SIG needs new grips. Working on them, buddy. Working on it. But for right now, this is the Kimber Micro 9, produced by Kimber Firearms right here in the United States. It's a 9mm, eight shots in the magazine with one in the chamber. We're going to be doing a review of this, and we're going to be coupling it with our Overwatch ammunition, and we're going to see about making grips for this from the 3D printer farm, so you get a 3-in-1 all-in-one
Nice.
review. So we're going to be working on that very, very soon. Mr. Peter, just remind me whether it's 226 or 229, and I will get to them forthwith. Just wanted to interject. I have to do a couple little plugs every now and then. You know, by the way, this ammunition ain't cheap. Good defensive ammunition is not cheap. This a 20-round box is a $45 a piece that they retail for. And we suggest that everybody who does carry a firearm for self-defense gets themselves a good quality box of ammunition that you load your magazines with, and then one good box that you shoot. Because defensive ammunition and a defensive firearm doesn't mean anything unless your firearm can eat it and spit it back out. So buy a box. It's a $40 investment, is an investment in your life.
Hey, on that note, guys,
you carry is the ammo that works with your gun.
Sorry, guys. On that note, I got to take off. You guys have a great night. It's been great talking to you again. I hope to talk to you guys soon.
Alex, it was fantastic having you here again, my friend. Keep in touch. You know we're here. You know where we are. And if the RV gets looking like it needs a road trip, you know where it can park.
Will do, brother. You guys have a great night.
Love you, brother. Be safe.
Thank you, Alex.
Love you guys too. Bye-bye.
Have a great night, Alex.
I love that guy.
Okay.
Yes.
Alex is such a genuinely good guy. There's so few people in this world that are as passionate and devoted to country and cause as what that young man is. And he has had, through his military career and his life, he has had such a rough road. And it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It matters how many times you get back up. That kid gets up time after time after time, and he keeps moving forward. He's got a beautiful daughter, and he's always there. He's always there, and just having him as an American is a testament to how great this country is, because we don't have his kind of personality. I don't think the world has that many people like him. So we're blessed to have him as one of ours, and we're blessed to call him a friend. He's a great guy.
So a few weeks back,
can't sing worth a shit, but he's a great
a few weeks back, we made an announcement that we had been selected to produce a 2-page spread for a publication that was going to be given out at the Medal of Honor Museum. What you see on the screen is a completed version of that item. I will be working on that to actually get it put up on the website so that everybody can read it and see what we had to say. However, that will probably not happen until after the opening of the National Medal of Honor Museum.
Michael, that looks fantastic.
It does look great. I like it. It's very nicely done. I like the images.
Thank you. So basically, it's a history of how the Second Amendment has been used throughout the history of the United States to defend the United States. So
that was nice. And as great as I'm going to have to do it. I got to do it. Because it's been bothering the shit out of me for weeks now. Millions and millions of people are going to see this article.
Yes.
Millions and millions of people. And, every time you hear a knock at the door, you don't know who's answering it, but sometimes, opportunity knocks. There are a couple of companies that had opportunities that they could have got involved with that thing, and it would have cost them not a damn thing at all. We could have given them a tremendous amount of exposure if they would have helped us with that. And these companies, they don't see the forest for the trees. They don't see benefit. And Michael has been killing himself putting this thing together. We had an opportunity to do something nice, and Michael killed himself putting that thing together. And he's our writer. He's the brains behind the operation. He did a beautiful job at it. I just hate the fact that there's a couple of people out there that are too stupid to take advantage of a great opportunity, and are like, hey, you know what?
Their loss.
That's
They're
it.
lost.
Yeah.
They're lost. Like I said, how many we say to people all the time, we build bridges that we don't ever get to cross here at the L1.
Mhm.
We have put together so many contacts and put wheels in motion to so many people in different companies without so much as a how do you do come the end of it. And we just keep doing it because it's not because we do for us, but because things we do are the right thing to do. You know, character is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. And we do the right thing all the time. We always try to do the right thing, make sure that somebody benefits, and we don't care who gets the credit for it. And a lot of times we don't. We don't get the credit for what we do and the work that we've done. And you know, we still keep plugging along all the time, and everything that we do is at our expense. And it'd be nice every now and then if we had a little bit of assistance, you know, from other organizations. So when Gary Ramey sends us a couple of boxes of ammo that says, hey, you want to test this stuff out for us? You know what? I wanted to test this stuff out. I don't have $200 to go popping for ammunition right now. You know, so I don't say he sent us a couple of boxes. I said, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If it sucks, I'm going to tell you. He says, I'm not worried. I'm not, you tell it like it is. You know, Gary helps us out. We have other people that helps us out. It's great when that happens, but we need extra help every now and then. So if you guys can find yourself the link to the Liberty First Foundation membership drive page, $15 a year, you're going to help us, help other people, and help you. And it's not, and believe me, $15 a year ain't going to make or break you. It ain't going to make or break us. And it sure as hell ain't going to feed me for a day. So that $15 doesn't go far, but it helps more than you know. You know, that $15 is the opportunity for us to travel to an event that we wouldn't be able to get to or not, and cover things that we would be able to or not. That $15 makes a big difference. And when you have other people that help us out, it makes a difference. And everything that we do, we try to give back. We try to do something in return. Jan is going to be getting something 3D printed, specially designed for her, a custom piece that I can get. I'm hoping finishes. I was hoping it was going to finish by showtime, but it's not. But I'll have to debut it next week. So, well, maybe Jan will debut it next week, because I think if I can get it done and packaged and wrapped up and shipped out, maybe she can come on next week and debut it for us. And that'll just be all of the way saying thank you for being a friend and a fan. So again, I'm gonna let these guys do the sign out because I'm freaking tired. I'm hungry and I'm out of coffee. And this is my last. So
yeah, it's about that time. We've been on. This is a long one for you guys.
And I didn't even get to talk about how to screw in a leftist's head.
Oh,
because my T-shirt isn't ready. I was gonna have the T-shirts done. They're not ready. I haven't left the garage except to chase my dog. I haven't been able to get everything done that I want to because I've been running around like a chicken without a head. But next week, I promise, I'll have the T-shirt ready, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. But I know this is how I got to why every Sunday my thing now goes for about, when I do my live stream, it's like 3, 4, 5 hours, because it was always meant to only be about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and now I'm up to average Sunday 4 hours. So I know exactly. I'm used to this, and it's easy.
There's just too much to cover.
There really is. It's just there's so much, and if you start talking, and they're so connected, it's amazing. So everyone out there who's been watching, and I thank you for taking the time to speak, to listen to us, to comment, even afterwards. You may see it and you need to leave a comment, or even if you don't, please like and share this, because every week we're here to talk with you and to each other about all these little things that add up, and they make a difference every time. Your voice, you just watching this makes a difference, believe it or not, because it helps to expand all of our voices, to make sure that the politicians are paying attention to this, and they do watch this. They do pay attention to this, They may not comment publicly about it, but they're paying attention because they want to hear what the pulse is, what's going on with you across this country.
And
Never forget that. Always be involved.
And they want to know what kind of seeds we're planting in their in
that
brains of other people, because they go, oh no, not these guys again. Oh Christ.
Yeah, then it's like, oh, calling us out again.
I heard
that.
And the thing is First Amendment isn't just the right to be able to say, write, print what you want to say. The First Amendment extends beyond that. It also is your right to be able to hear what you want to hear. Okay, if you want to be informed or listen to something, that is a part of the First Amendment. It is your ability to be able to listen to what you want to listen to. It's your ability to be able to hear from people like Liberty First Foundation, or if you want to, CNN. That is a part of the First Amendment, and people don't understand that. The First Amendment isn't just about being able to say what you want to say. It's about being able to hear what you want to hear as much. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign us all out. Does anybody else have any parting comments they want to make real quick?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, I do appreciate everybody being on the show tonight. I appreciate everybody in the comments. Without you, we wouldn't have a show, honestly. Okay, I do appreciate the people that have already signed up in our membership drive, and I do encourage you to like, share, subscribe, comment, help us get the word out. Okay, plain and simple. Help us get the word out. No, I don't need any chicken right now, Peter. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight. The link to our membership drive is on the screen right now, and I also posted it in the chats. So with that, good night, and we will see you next week, just like every other Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Give everybody a round of applause.
Oh, there you go.
All right, everybody. You guys have a good night. I'm going to sleep.
All right.